The offseason is well underway, and we here at Locked On NHL Game Night are tackling the toughest questions with our favorite local experts.
Tonight, we cross the border and check in on the Montreal Canadiens.
Expectations sky high for these Habs, but will they be able to match the expectations?
We'll answer that question and so much more as we welcome Habs experts Ian Boisvert and Laura Saba on this summer edition of Locked On NHL Game Night.
When that final horn sounds, you know it's time for Locked On NHL Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. Prepare to experience game day reactions like never before, only on Locked On NHL Game Night. Your team every day.
Hello there, hockey fans, and welcome to another episode of Locked On NHL Game Night. I'm Cam Stewart, a sad Boston Bruins fan who's going to be professional and say nice, flattering things on this episode.
And I'm Tyler Feldman, a lifelong Penguins fan, born and raised in Pittsburgh, currently loving life in Austin, Texas. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Cam, look who's joining us tonight.
We're crossing cultures. We're crossing language barriers. Laura, Ian Boisvert coming on from Locked On Canadiens. This is going to be a fun kind of summer for you guys getting ready for this team.
Yeah, it's been a blast already. I mean, going from the playoffs to immediately making the biggest splash of the NHL draft sort of beginning of the offseason, it's a pretty great time to be a Canadiens fan, especially after many years of that not being the case. So we're living pretty good right now.
Laura, we are going through the Atlantic Division. Everyone we're talking with, they are so high on the Montreal Canadiens. Do you think that's warranted?
Muted.
She's so high on the Habs that she's muting herself. She doesn't want
they have left her speechless.
She doesn't want anyone else to hear how high she is on the Habs.
You'd think that I haven't been doing this this is my 6th season coming up. I honestly, I think that it is warranted, but I think people need to have a little bit of patience because I do think that this team has a super bright future, but I don't necessarily know that this particular year has to be that year that they take that huge step forward. Obviously you want to see them take those steps forward, but I'm thinking more 2 to 3 years. That's when people should be scared of the Habs. Like that's the timeline I have in mind.
I feel like that's fair, balanced, and super realistic, Cam, don't you?
That's almost too realistic. It's almost we need some more flair to it. But I think a lot of people obviously are high on this team because that young core, which we'll talk about in a second. But then you add the Noah Dobson deal, which Ian was talking about, and that does probably accelerate things for some fans on the outside looking in. Do you think that's fair in terms of them being like, well, maybe this team is ready. They just made the playoffs. They made a big move like this, and they're young and cheap.
I think it raises external expectations more so than internal. I think one of the hallmarks of this current front office with Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton is that they are very patient. They are not willing to sacrifice the future to, for very short-term gain. It's why, yes, they just traded 2 first-round picks, both 16 and 17 in the first round of this year's draft, to the Islanders for Noah Dobson, but they get a young right shot puck moving defenseman under contract for 8 years at a deal that now is paying him 9.5. And you go, it's kind of a lot right now, but in a few years when that cap has gone way, 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 way up, that's going to be a sweet contract for them. So like that's the sort of thing that right now the Canadiens would, they would love to do at every position they possibly can, is sell a little bit of those futures for a young player. Now the problem isn't every team in the NHL trying to do that right now? It's kind of difficult to be in that field.
Yeah.
I don't know. You look, Nick Suzuki, Lane Hudson, those are 2 guys that stick out to me. Suzuki was unbelievable, 89 points last year. And then Hudson as a rookie defenseman, 66 points, Calder Memorial Trophy as the NHL's top rookie. Special guys that you can really build around. And Laura, to your point, I feel like having those centerpieces is critical.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there a lot of the core is established, and I know we're going to get into a position the Canadians really need to work on, not just this offseason, but they need to sort it out within the next year, let's say. But I think the core pieces are there, and everyone took a step forward this year. Nick Suzuki had never attained this point total in a or this rate, right? Lane Hudson, this is his first season. He was able to break records. He was able to really, really make his mark. But there's nowhere to go but up from here for him. But you also have to think about Cole Caufield, right? Almost getting to that 40 goal mark. You want to think about Slavkovsky, right? He also had a slow start to the season. He had one last year as well. But there's nothing that says that he's not just going to get more and more established as a top line talent. And we haven't even begun to talk about Ivan Demidov. And that's just, I think, icing on the cake at this point. Like, at this point in their rebuild, it's just so much to smile about.
And I mean, you mentioned it. That's kind of the buzz name, Demidov, right? And it obviously this team got better as the season went on. You see that a lot with young teams, and the momentum at the end of that, when they're into a playoff spot, those last couple of games, Demidov comes in, big debut, and then suddenly a week later, you're not only in the playoffs, you're having your first Bell Center playoff crowd for the first time in years and years and years. So having that, where it was such a tight race at the end to get into the postseason, and then having a round and learning some tough lessons in that first round of the playoffs, what does that do for this core? I mean, it's got to be immeasurable.
I'm getting goosebumps just listening to it.
Yeah, I mean, it was when we went into the season, our expectation for a positive season was that they're playing meaningful games after the calendar turns to the next year, right? And that was a pretty low bar considering what they had been doing, where their meaningful games ended by American Thanksgiving, right? Like, that's just the sort of team that they were. Now, they got to play a ton of those meaningful games, and a lot of this goes to Nick Suzuki. He apparently had a meeting with Kent Hughes, the general manager, before the trade deadline, before Four Nations, I think. And he said, don't trade away, don't sell at the deadline. We want to be good. And Kent Hughes said, okay, go win games. And Nick Suzuki started at a torrid pace coming out of that, coming into the trade deadline. They didn't trade anybody. They re-signed Jake Evans. I think the fact that Nick Suzuki played as well as he did down the stretch is the only reason we had any of that stuff. The only reason we got Game 3 at the Bell Center, which was, I think, a pivotal moment in this team's rebuild. So you can put a lot of this directly on the captain's shoulders. I don't think there's a player in the league who is more suited to wear that C on his jersey. Like that. Wow. Suzuki is that guy in Montreal.
So you think that he can handle the pressure of these expectations coming into next season?
No question. I don't think there's a guy better suited for it. And we've seen, like, I live in Connecticut. I was pretty stoked when Max Pacioretty was the captain, because he was, he's from my backyard, right? But he was uniquely unqualified for that. He could not handle what was happening, right? It's unfair. It's unfair what happened. But with Suzuki, you see this guy who, water just rolls off of him. It just, nothing really seems to bother him. This is the reason we got any of this good stuff down the stretch, is because 14 put the team on his back.
Yeah, and he's only 26. He just turned 26 yesterday. So the future is bright, and he's got ice in his veins. I think, like, one thing that I love about him is that he's just stone cold, right?
Yeah.
Criticism doesn't get to him. He will admit accountability. He will take, he'll be accountable, but nothing gets to him. And, nothing, honestly, gives me more joy than to watch him put naysayers away, right? I think that's, to me, like, Nick Suzuki is that guy. And he's learning French. He's doing all the right things. He had his wedding in Montreal. He's embracing the city. He really understands the assignment. And I think Nick Suzuki is, the talent. We haven't seen that kind of talent. We might have seen that kind of personality and that kind of drive, but we haven't seen that kind of talent matched with that personality suited to be the Montreal Canadiens captain, I think, in a while.
I will say Laura followed the Suzuki wedding like it was a royal wedding, because in a sense it almost felt
I think it is in Quebec, isn't it?
Yeah.
Laura, give us some more. We need some more details. What was the coolest detail
Well, they actually surprised their whole family because they got married privately in Turks and Caicos, just the two of them. And then when everybody showed up for their wedding, they were like, "Surprise, we're already married. Let's party."
Turks and Caicos, the Montreal of the Caribbean.
So I've heard. I think that's the hockey way to do it. Surprise everyone, just say, "Hey, let's party." So anyway, that's how Nick Suzuki's doing it. He's trying to be the first one to lift the cup for Montreal in, let's just call it a long time, and start an even bigger party out there on St. Catherine Street. But what do the Canadiens need to do to make that next step? What holes do they need to fill when everything is going just peachy up in Montreal? We'll talk about that next on Locked On NHL Game Night. But first, we've all been there. You had your business. You needed to hire somebody like yesterday, and time is running out. That's where Indeed gets in here. That's how you find amazing candidates fast. That's how Montreal found Martin St. Louis. I'm convinced of it. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed Sponsored Jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. Okay, we've all been in that situation. Every day that you're not getting the right hire is a huge setback. That's why these sponsored jobs come in handy, to make sure that post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now, you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon, LOCKEDON, right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On NHL Game Night. Terms and conditions do apply. Hiring, Indeed, is all you need. Here on Locked On NHL Game Night Season Preview Edition, we've got the Habs in the house. So if you've got high expectations for this Montreal Canadiens team, or you think we're blowing it way out of proportion, let us know in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss anything coming out from Locked On NHL and all 32 of our team previews as we build it up to puck drop in October. Let's get back to Montreal, shall we? Everything's been going so well in Boisvert and Laura Saba. Everything's going so great. Like, it's all going to be coming together right now, except for the fact that there is one or two holes in this Canadiens team. We've heard about it throughout this offseason. Now the focus goes to the trade market, to how Montreal could fill it. What is the biggest hole for this Canadiens team, and how do they look to fill it?
So I was at a driving range in Connecticut, and I met a Canadiens fan. They're in the wild, just ran into one, and we, they
look just like you and me. Yeah,
classic Connecticut.
Exchanged pleasantries, and as he walked out the door, he turned around and he goes, "They need to get that 2-seat." And I think nothing sums up the fact that need is so glaring than that exchange I had with a complete stranger in a completely different place. Was that the Canadiens have a gigantic hole at second line center, and possibly even third, depending on how the rest of the lineup shakes out. They lost Christian Dvorak over the summer. They weren't going to pay him over $5 million to be their third line center, so go get that money in Philadelphia. But the big need is the 2-seed, because it's going to be the guy who's set up to play with Ivan Demidov, which is a massively important role for this team, because not only do they need that to be competitive, but they need that to insulate this 19-year-old kid who's coming over to North America for the first time to play hockey. So it's a massive need for them. We talk about it, I don't know, on our show daily. I think it's been a daily thing since the season ended, was, all right, who's going to play second line center next year? And we've cycled through about every candidate you can imagine. We have some favorites. We have some that maybe not.
So let's go through the favorites for this audience. Let's go through some of the favorites to be that 2-seed.
Kick us off here?
Well, Tyler's going to kick me off the show, but
I know exactly what she's going to say. I know exactly. I'm going to tell you it's not going to happen, but go ahead. You can say it.
I'm going to say the words Sidney and Crosby, but listeners can draw their own conclusions. There's nothing more ideal than having somebody who is a superstar but on the decline, because that's the person who's been through it all, obviously. And
he's not declining, though. He's just not declining. That's my biggest thing.
You got to let me get to that point.
Okay, sorry. Continue.
Because everyone else, nobody else is going to come close to Sidney Crosby. I think Sidney Crosby, the last year that he's playing, he's still going to be one of the top 3 players in the league, right? I think that a lot of people think just because of his age, they kind of underestimate him and they don't have a lot of expectations, but every single year he proves us wrong. And I think the idea of Sidney Crosby coming to Montreal is born out of just simply there's like an image of him as a child in a Habs jersey. He talks about having been a Canadiens fan when he was a kid. And I think everybody's just kind of hung on to that. And nobody ever thought that he would leave Pittsburgh, except for the fact that the Penguins right now are in full rebuild mode, whether they want to talk about it or not. And I think it's going to be a while before they're cup contenders. And if I'm Sidney Crosby, I want to go out with another cup under my belt. So there's a few destinations for him. And I just think Montreal should be one of them.
Laura, excellent points. In all honesty, one, yes, Sidney Crosby, what a great mentor he could be. Kind of like how Mario Lemieux was Sidney Crosby's mentor when he came to Pittsburgh. Additionally, yeah, to your point, the Penguins are rebuilding. And Sidney Crosby, if he does want to leave on that high note, it likely won't happen in Pittsburgh. Now, having said all that, and we've talked about this, Cam has heard this before, but Mario Lemieux, ironically enough, given his connection to Montreal, it is hard to fathom Sidney Crosby playing anywhere else.
No question.
It
would look weird.
It just is. It's just one of those situations where I feel like Sidney Crosby has been carrying the legacy of Mario Lemieux and then some, given what he's been able to bring to the city of Pittsburgh. But on a consistent basis, he's just married to the game. And I said this to Cam, but Evgeny Malkin, I thought he was going to go elsewhere. He ended up re-signing because he wanted to play with Sid. And you have Chris Letang, connections to the city as well, who's not going to go anywhere. I really see it unrealistic. Obviously, yes, the Penguins are in this odd rebuild where they have these aging stars, but Sidney Crosby's still bringing it. What would the return have to be to get Sidney Crosby?
Astronomical.
So and everything else that he brings, the ticket. I see it very unrealistic, even though the points you made, Laura, sound great and make a lot of sense. I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I think Crosby only goes somewhere if Crosby wants to go there, and we have no inclination at this point that that's true. And we're all just kind of reading the tea leaves.
And I guess the other one last point is, yes, the Canadiens are definitely cup contenders, and adding Sidney Crosby would add to that contention for Montreal. What would you have to give up?
Yeah, it would probably empty the farm.
The city of Pittsburgh would burn. It would. They would look at that Lemieux statue outside of the arena and they'd be like, Sidney, this is what you could have had. And Sidney would be like, well, I can still have this, right? And probably they retired Yager's number finally after all those years. I just don't
They just see Tom Brady a statue at Foxborough.
Exactly.
Bobby Orr's got a statue.
Yeah, hey.
Noted Chicago Blackhawk Bobby Orr has a statue in Boston.
Anything is possible, and it's certainly worth the discussion. I just don't see it happening. I'm obviously a little biased too, so let's throw that in there as well.
Well, that's where I was coming from too. I'm very biased, right? If we're going to talk realistic choices, I feel like there's a couple more names, and I think, Cam, you might have had one you wanted to throw out.
Well, yeah, I was gonna piggyback off this last point. Obviously, the return for Sidney Crosby would be huge, and I'm not going to compare this next player directly to Sidney Crosby, but would it be worth it more to if you're going to send a haul out for someone like Mason McTavish, a 23-year-old center whom, yeah, he's not Sidney Crosby, but that could be a part of your core with the Suzukis and the Demidovs and the Cole Caufields for years to come. So he doesn't bring some of that insulation you were talking about, Laura, of playing alongside Demidov, but would it make more sense to go for a younger guy like McTavish or, I know there's been Jordan Kyrou rumors. He obviously plays on the wing, not at center, but would it be more worth it to go for something like that?
Yeah, I think there's two schools of thought here. One is we need a stopgap second line center until Michael Hage is ready. Michael Hage was a first-round pick a few years ago. He's shaping up to be an excellent NHL forward when his time comes. He's still a few years away from that. So, are you going with one of the guys that we've thrown around is like Nazem Kadri, right? Like that would be a perfect fill-in on that line. on that second line. He also, for what it's worth, grew up a Habs fan. So that's kind of what's kicked off that discussion. Or
it was part of some great Leafs
what?
collapses, which is awesome too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it would make 3 fan bases kind of just sick to their stomach at all times. So it's maximum chaos at all times. But the other option here is a McTavish type, a younger guy. Maybe you say, you know what, Michael Hage, we don't know what he's going to be. We know Mason McTavish is that now. Do we take that? Are we ready to commit to this core? I think the decision at second line center is going to show the Canadiens' hand in a way. It's going to show us if they think it's go time for this core, or if they want to wait and see a little bit more before they pull the trigger on something that big. I think that's sort of the canary in the coal mine for me that I'm watching. And if they decide to make a big move, it's okay. This is the team. They're going to roll with this core. If not, it's sort of let's wait and see and sort of bide our time until we can get something going.
Canary in the coal mine. This show has brought
pretty good, man.
Every show there's some new phrase that I'm learning. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Well,
when Marty's hooker by hook or by crook last time. Yeah. Now
Canary.
You write these down, Tyler.
What was it last night?
By hook or by crook?
By hook or by crook?
Yeah, I thought people knew that one. Tyler was like, opening up a present on Christmas morning. He couldn't believe it. Oh, anyway, before we get into more of these, before we just start listing them all off, Laura said I had another person to bring up because I do. We're going to do it after the break when we also talk about how the Habs fit into this tough Atlantic division. Which one of their bitter rivals are they about to leapfrog in the division standings? We'll do it next on Locked On NHL Game Night.
But first, let's do an ad read. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings you entire financial life into one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or even on your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. How about that? Canceling those alone saved me money every month. HBO Max, Apple TV. Sometimes you got to mix and match to make financial gains, right? Monarch makes it simple to review my finances with my partner as well. We can both see budgets, goals, and spending activity all in one place. That partner part, it's still in the process, okay? We're working on it. So don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL.
Back here on Game Night, Locked On NHL Game Night with Locked On Canadiens. Laura Saba, Ian Boisvert, joining myself, Cam Stewart, and Tyler Feldman. Let's look at this Atlantic division a little bit in just a second, because Laura, you teed me up, and I have to still hit the ball off the tee here. So we're talking about those two Cs, and I'm watching the Canadiens in that first-round playoff series against Washington, and obviously the Tom Wilson hit, however you want to parse through it, it changes the kind of the look of the series from that point on. And I'm sitting there in the next round and I'm like, Sam Bennett's going to be a free agent. Sam Bennett can be a number 2 center. Like, Sam Bennett's got that edge about him that could really tip the scales in a playoff series. I know it's a moot point now. He re-signs with Florida. Is that someone, was Sam Bennett someone that was on at least Canadiens fans' radar in this offseason?
Absolutely. I think the biggest problem was the price, right? We didn't think that he was going to come in at this price. And honestly, if he wasn't signing in Florida, he would have come in at a much higher, come in with a much higher price tag. So that was really the conversation we were having, because we did think that Florida was going to have a little bit of trouble kind of managing their situation, managing all the players they had to re-sign, but they managed to keep. You really want to be Florida right now. And I think it has nothing to do with all the stuff that people say about the sunshine, the palm trees, the taxes, anything like that. If you're a winning team, if you have the potential to bring cups and multiple cups, I think everybody's going to want to play on your team, right? So the Montreal Canadiens might not have been the one now, but hopefully in a couple of years, whoever that big free agent is going to be, like Montreal is top of their list. Sorry, I'm just like running out of you'd think that I don't talk about the Habs every day. So really, I think Sam Bennett was somebody that people were looking at particularly for that toughness element. I think that the Montreal Canadiens can work on team toughness a little bit more without needing to bring in that guy. I just think that they really need to figure out what they're doing at 2C and then kind of build around that. Because I'm not too worried about them being pushed around after that experience they had with the Washington Capitals. I'm not too worried about that. I am a little bit worried that they go too hard the other way and just pick up toughness with no skill. But fortunately, this front office seems to be a little bit smarter than that.
But man, adding Bennett to that. Oh man, you think Nazem Kadri being added would have pissed some people off? My Lord, what would have happened if Sam Bennett was there? Anyway, I digress. Tyler, this is the toughest division in hockey.
Arguably, probably.
I'd say so.
Probably. I mean, that's all we've been talking about with this division so far on these summer
good
sessions,
selling point
right?
for NHL game night. Yeah.
Well, I think the Maple Leafs regress, and it's Ottawa and Montreal kind of fighting at the top this season, and that's exciting for the National Hockey League. With Florida, okay? I'm not forgetting about Florida.
Well, Florida doesn't really care about winning the division, too. That's
worth not at all.
Tampa Bay, Florida,
all last year.
But the two teams that are basically I see as inline waiting to make a move, it's Montreal and Ottawa. So who's it going to be? But yeah, I see both of those squads as playoff teams.
Yeah, and I think both of those teams also see themselves as playoff teams. It becomes it's a numbers game, right? So the Canadiens and the Senators made it this year in large part due to the Rangers completely falling off the face of the earth, and the same for Cam's Boston Bruins, right? They just did not. Yes. They did not keep that. Everyone going into the season thought that they would have been a playoff team, and it's just I don't know if you can count on them being that bad again. Like I know that they're not going to be great, but I think they'll stay, to use a Marty St. Louisism, in the mix. They're not gonna fall apart like they did last year, I don't think. Remember, they sold everybody at the deadline. They were the Providence Bruins by February. So it's not something that
don't disrespect the Providence Bruins like that. They deserve better.
They almost won a series against Charlotte. They almost did that. But man, that quick aside to bring my bias in here, wouldn't that be awesome if these two teams were battling for a playoff spot? I am not as confident as the Bruins as it sounds like Ian might be. But and they should have a bounce back. They shouldn't be 15th in the Eastern Conference, but I don't think they're that much better. But if those two teams are battling it out, beginning of April, and put some vinegar back in this pot here, I'm in.
Yeah,
I just made that one up.
Look at Detroit. Is Detroit finally going to take that step? And
Buffalo,
Buffalo
Anybody?
continues to have the horses, and then we watch them, and they don't have the horses. Like they're 5 years away from being 5 years away at all times, is what it feels like.
The team of the future, and they always will be.
Yeah, yeah. So look, I like Montreal's chances in that division, as tough as it is, but it's a gauntlet, and I do see the Leafs regressing a little bit. But I almost wonder how much of that's going to be addition by subtraction without that, contract dispute hanging over that roster all year. So it is I would say it's the most fun division in the sport to watch right now. There's the matchups are incredible. Just how it's all going to shake out. They sent 5 teams to the playoffs last year. That's not something that most divisions do every year.
And it's entirely possible they send 5 teams to the playoffs this year. And I think one thing that you kind of have to look at this division and look at most of the teams in it, not the Buffaloes, but a team like Ottawa, a team like Boston, a team like Tampa, they just won't die, right? So there's no reason to believe that the Toronto Maple Leafs will die, right? We know Florida is going to be the pedigree. We know that. But I think like there's just so much in this division that's annoying. And I think it's going to be really frustrating. But if I had to choose between Ottawa making it this year and Montreal, I think Montreal does have the slight edge, partially because Ottawa kind of has this unofficial internal cap now, and Montreal is willing to spend. So I think that's really going to be the difference maker.
Laura, what annoys you the most about this division? I've got to know.
It's got to be the Ottawa Senators. Just their existence, just every game against them, just all of their false toughness, all of their they're grinding you into submission, but really not. They're like Florida, but like with less talent, right?
Let it out.
Florida gets away with all kinds of dirty plays, but Ottawa's just that with less talent.
They couldn't grind out the Leafs in a playoff series, which should really prove Laura's point here.
The Sens have led the league in power play opportunities for like the last 3 years, and then those go away in the playoffs. So it's not all that surprising.
Let it out.
No, we are locked on hating the Ottawa Senators as well.
This is a safe space. This is a safe space.
I hope you guys don't do crossovers. It's really tough to hate those guys. I hope you do your hating from outside the club.
We don't hate any of the hosts. It's never between us. It is the sweaters. It is not the people.
Gotcha. Because it seemed personal right there. I had a tough time separating right there.
All right, guys. I got one last question for each of you to answer. Because I'm a huge history nerd. Both Tyler and I, we can get in the digs for hockey history.
Cam more than me, but sure.
Yeah, but like when you look at Montreal, obviously there's always the context of what they've been in the past. A lot of Stanley Cups. I won't name them how many, but a lot of Stanley Cups. Obviously, probably the best hockey city in the world. So when we look at this and the excitement around this team, finish this sentence, please, for me. This is the best Montreal Canadiens team since.
Oh, that's a great question. I'll say 2014. That was the year they went to the conference final. They lost after Price got taken out in that Rangers series. The cup run team is great, but they were great because of how magical they were, because we did not expect any of that. If you watched that team that season, down the stretch, they were a mess. And then they made the playoffs and everything was fine. So that 2014 team was like, we expected them to be great, and they were. It was the most rewarding version of that team that we watched. So I'll say 2014.
Yeah. Beat the President's Trophy winners.
It's a shame. Isn't it a shame that was the last time both of these teams were good at the same time? It's not fair.
It is. Yeah. And by the way, because sorry, Laura, real quick, because that was the end of like a decade plus of them meeting a lot in the playoffs. Like for people like me coming of age with those Bruins teams, it was kind of expected you would face Montreal. There's a real hatred there. The pot was boiling. All right. It was really boiling. And then it kind of just tapered off after this lame duck Game 7 home loss. But anyway, Laura, best Montreal Canadiens team since.
I am inclined to agree with Ian, because I think that the 93 team that won was another one where it was less expected, right?
Yeah.
It was a lot of things went right for that team to win. So I think if Carey Price had not gotten injured, I think, I don't know that they would have beat LA, but I think they would have really been like a legitimate contender to be in that Stanley Cup final.
Shout out to the 93 Islanders. Took out Tyler's boys, or else they would have cruised to 3 in a row.
No question.
If I'm not mistaken at that. So this is the best Canadiens team in a long time. And where they haven't been a great team necessarily the last couple of years, they've had a great team doing Locked On with Laura and Ian Boisvert. So appreciative of you guys coming on and previewing this Habs team. Get involved in the comment section, everyone. Let me know what you think about this Canadiens team. Best team since blank. Fill it in yourself. Like, subscribe. It helps us keep our jobs and helps us on the path towards 5,000 subscribers on this channel. Remember, we will be previewing all 32 teams. Myself and Tyler, the Atlantic and the Pacific. We will get you ready for puck drop. But for Tyler Feldman, I'm Gibb Stewart. We will see you on the next one on Locked On NHL Game Night.